morning, everyone. I'm Janine Gray. I'm a leader in Deloitte's customer strategy and applied design practice. So let me first thank Anahita for such an inspiring and energizing talk about customer experience. Let's give her a It was great to hear her talk. Anahita is the only mother I know that thinks of her children as customers. Okay, it is now my pleasure to introduce our first panel, Keys to CX Success and IT Modernization. So please join me in welcoming the moderator, Bob DeLuca, who is Executive Director of the Centers of Excellence at the General Services Agency, and the panelists to the stage.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to have us come up here and talk to you a little bit about customer experience and how we perform that as part of the Centers of Excellence. Before we get into some of the prepared questions that we have, can we just get a sort of show of hands about how many folks here are from industry? Maybe more. How many folks are from government? Okay. Not very many. Okay, good. All right, that helps us. That's good. No, that's good. It helps us understand how to address questions and how to address our answers here. So that's great. One last question of you, and then we'll get into the questions of them, is how many folks are familiar with or have worked with the Centers of Excellence before? Okay. Not that many. So maybe before we get into the questions, I'll do like a 1-minute spiel on what the Centers of Excellence are and sort of how we formed and what our mission is. So the IT Modernization Centers of Excellence started around summer of 2017, and as part of partnership with the Office of American Innovation and GSA. The first customer was U.S. Department of Agriculture. We are now at Housing and Urban Development and OPM. So we're expanding slowly, but we're expanding out to other agencies. And we are very excited about the work that we're doing here. Our mission is to partner with those agencies to produce an effect on, to I guess, utilize IT resources to produce a better effect for the citizens. So with that, is there anybody who want to expand on that, or we can get into the questions here? No? All right, awesome. One of the things that I'm going to toss to the panel is there are, even within GSA, there are other organizations that have a mission that is similar to this. There's 18Fs, there's the PIFs, there's other groups that do this. What is it that makes the COEs unique? Maybe we start at Suka and then kind of work our way in.
I think there's a lot of, it's a great partnership. I think with the amount of folks that come in with the COE engagement, so for example with USDA, we have 5 centers of excellence, one around customer experience, one around contact centers, one around data analytics, cloud optimization, and infrastructure optimization. And with all of those, we kind of came in as a big team. We were dedicated to, definitely the partnership with the CIO helped a lot because we have a good sense of kind of the department's infrastructure from that point of view. But really, I think it's kind of that blend of disciplines. To Anahita's point, we really value kind of all of those expertise, and bringing them all in-house at once with industry partners was really critical, I think, to the approach that we took. We really, even if we're working on a project level, we're always thinking at an enterprise level. So I think that perspective and that blend of expertise is a really unique and nice partnership that we have with industry.
I would just echo, I know in my government career, I think I've learned that we really need to leverage industry more within the government. I think this is a unique opportunity to do that. So I like the combination of industry partnering with that partner agency and bringing GSA expertise as well.
Great. The only thing I would like to add to that is that we are, maybe it is a differentiating factor. We are heavily invested in industry. So approximately talk about phase in a second, but in our phase 1 efforts, we're over 80% of the staff are vendors on those groups. So, and then when you get into an implementation, it's probably closer to 90-95% folks are from industry. So we are definitely not taking your jobs by any means. We're actually, working. We need you in order to get our work accomplished. So it's pretty good. So now that I brought it up, maybe I'll talk about that. So the way in which we work is not maybe all that different than other organizations, but we have a we're going with a 2.5 maybe phase approach where we'll come in and previously we've done 6-month or so discovery and analysis where we'll come in with a small group of folks and they'll ask all our questions and sort of validate needs and make sure that it's something that we as GSA can provide. And then phase 2 starts more of a full-fledged implementation. And since there is a large industry group out here, we have just launched the BPA. I think the kickoff is even this afternoon, so maybe some of you will be over there later. But so that is definitely a place where you can participate. But the BPA is really for the discovery analysis work. So we'll take questions from the audience in a little bit, and we can ask whatever questions you want to. Okay. Back to the group here. So as leads, you're asked to come in to an agency, and the leads we have here, not all the leads are represented, but certain areas. We have customer experience. We have contact center and data analytics. So, what approaches, what tools do you use? What is most critical to your success when you come into an agency? I'll start on this side. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I'm coming at it from a CX perspective, but working closely with my data and contact center colleagues as well. So I think when we come in, what's maybe unique to the approach is that, like you guys all know, right, to attack any problem, it's any IT problem, you need to balance considerations, human considerations, and IT considerations. And behind that is all the work we do. And I think something that's a bit unique is where kind of when we first started engagement is infusing those people considerations and business considerations into what is typically an IT-heavy process. So from my point of view, that's, I think, a kind of unique factor.
Yeah, echoing that point, I think another thing that we bring to the table is the fact that we are embedded in the agencies and able to build true coalitions from the bottom up as well as from the top down. Making sure that we bring folks together from all across the agency that we're at and all across disciplines to create a unified vision and push that vision forth and ultimately see that vision executed in phase 2 in the implementation space.
And I would also add that we look at what's been done already. So if there's been studies that's been done, we leverage that. We don't want to recreate the wheel. So we take that and we just try to get it across the finish line. So and understand why certain things that were recommended, why weren't they done, and how can we get those done.
Right. I'll just echo on the partnership piece. I think sitting there day in and day out in their office, really engaging with fellow feds, and on top of that, also collaborating with existing industry partners that they've already had in-house. Quite a lot of the companies represented here and also at the agencies have been there a while, and so you have to make good partnerships with existing vendors, new vendors, and we're all there for the people at the end of the day. So how can we work together to better serve moving forward? So I think it is a very unique capability to just be part of that agency sitting there and really understanding their needs, what they've done before, and all of that.
All of you mentioned partnership. How does that partnership play out? Is it something that is understood immediately, or is it something that takes time? I mean, it's not a typical approach. Maybe Eric, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the partnership at each agency looks a little bit differently, but I think ultimately our goal is to make sure that, to Simca's point, we're marching lockstep with what's been done in the past and understand how we can take what's been done in the past, add our interdisciplinary COE perspective, and move that vision into the future. Ideally, that requires all of us working together and making sure that we're truly presenting a unified approach amongst ourselves and amongst the agencies so that everyone everyone feels comfortable with the path forward. Otherwise, the adoption of what we typically propose will be more challenging. So making sure everyone's rowing the boat in the same direction is often one of our key goals at the very, very outset.
Okay.
I think, just to speak frankly, like, it's not all perfect from the get-go. Like, you're forming a team, you're gonna have, hey, I don't trust you yet, and, trying to figure all that out. So, we work through that just like any other partnership and establishing that trust. So, but we work at it day in and day out, so.
Absolutely. I was going to say, I would have said something similar to that, is that and from the design of the group, we're not there forever. So
Right.
you have to come in quickly, and the minute you start, there's not necessarily a planned exit, but there's definitely an idea that you will not be there forever. So it's something that it's hard to build that trust up front, and we work very diligently to make that difficult relationship happen faster. So.
And we want to build that we want to build that expertise within the agency so that we can leave and leave, something successful for them to keep on implementing.
So I don't think my microphone's working, right? So,
You stand closer to me.
but I'll just. Just from, without talking about my background, coming from pretty much exclusively private sector before COE, that was something that was appealing to me, and something that's truly unique, is that the end goal is to not be present. The end goal is to transition, to bring hopefully some additional ways of thinking, thank you, some new skill sets, and
I guess more jackhammer.
and leave those behind.
Like that, sure. Cool. All right, great. The centers are at 3 agencies now, and we have 2 of those agencies represented here or not agencies aren't represented, but our team members from 2 of the agencies are represented. Are there trends that you're seeing? Are there things that are common across those, or things that are totally unique at each of the agencies? I'm sure there's a combination of both. Cynthia, do you want to explain a little bit back
Sure.
there? Been at both. So.
Sure, I think when we come into an agency and kind of seeing a little bit of HUD and a lot more of USDA, we definitely come in, with this partnership with the CIO. So there is a lot of very heavy IT modernization kind of front and center in mind. The CIO knows this, we know this, you can't do that without the business, right? And so there is a lot of heavy lift when it comes to, bridging the gap of assessing how is the relationship now, where are their needs. We're not going to be a typical shop where, we want to build this new great, robotic processing thing, so we're going to go to the business, ask for the requirements, come back to us, build it, and then throw it back over the wall to them, so that's not our style. So how do we take a human-centered approach? How do we, maybe it's a course of workshops with folks, maybe it's a journey mapping exercise. So we did a lot of that actually very heavily at USDA, and we still do it today, even into phase 2. So phase 2 is a little bit more focused on the solutioning aspect, but it never stopped the human and design element techniques throughout the process. So really, we go at it in a very integrated way, and we continue to work through it in an integrated way. So it's not just heavy in the beginning, we involve the business, but then later when we're building, we don't involve them. No, we take a very agile design, human-centered approach to all of the work that we do, wherever we can, all the way through build. I mean, we're still about to launch, different products during phase 2, but every step of the way we're always, involving the business and the IT and blending that capability and really enriching the partnership so that, to Megan's point, the transition can be a lot more smooth than it would be if we, had just engaged them one and done.
Sure, so,
you spent a lot of time at both. So.
Yeah, so I've been at both USDA and HUD, and shocker, there's tons of silos. I think just looking at holistically how we can break down those silos, and leverage the contact center data that comes in and what their customers are telling them, looking at the web data, so just breaking down all of the barriers between them, so that those agencies can really look at their whole holistic perspective of what customers are saying, what they're asking, and how they can improve.
Fine, you can spend some time in both.
Yeah, I really would echo, am I off again? I would really echo what was being said, what was said about, I just see over time, even over just a few months, the ratcheting up of the human and kind of infusing that into a typical IT approach, which is a big deal. It's a difficult thing to do. So really echoing what Simka said, one trend I see kind of is starting to hear people talk about on the teams at these agencies, talk about developing solutions and evaluating whether they're working or not based on people criteria. So there's a quote I recently heard, I can tell you this one, at HUD from an employee, and it's wonderfully simple, but it's beautiful, which is the center of human-centered design is the human. And that was echoed to colleagues, it was spoken to colleagues in the IT organization about a solution they were trying to develop. When I first heard it, I thought, well, no kidding, of course. But it's what's said. But it was really a pivotal moment because that person was reminding all of their colleagues that we're doing this for people, right? We're not just developing IT for the sake of increasing how modern we are.
I like that. I mean, that is the core of it, what we're doing, and it is in every piece of effort that we engage in as the Center of Excellence and as the broader team, right? It's to bring something new and modern and more beneficial to our end clients. It's great. There are some government people in the audience here today. So what would you suggest is maybe a piece of advice that you give them for how they can get started down their own path, whether it's with Center of Excellence Development or on their own?
For me, I think it's always to be curious about your customers. Be more curious about your customers than you think you know already. So take it a step further. If you've never, gone to the field, gone to your, regional offices, spoken directly to your customers that, some of the employees out there are seeing day to day, go. Take a team of researchers with you if you have the budget for it. Do ethnographic research. Explore observation and qualitative techniques that are used a lot in design that maybe could add value to your IT modernization efforts and things like that. But to Megan's point earlier, I would also explore what you have in-house already. So if you're at one agency, if you're at a department, think about other channels your customers probably use. Contact centers for one, in-person operations as another, websites, social media. Make friends with the people who manages those channels. Try to glean some insights from that data. Does it have anything to do with the program that you run? Does it have nothing to do, but you could still gain more insight into who is using your services, who they are, so that you can provide a better, more broader experience for them.
Anybody else want to?
I would just echo that. I mean, just talk to your users, look at the feedback that's coming in. Sometimes, a simple suggestion could be implemented very quickly rather than, a long-term solution. So I think just leveraging all of that is crucial.
Eric, from to follow into that, right? There's customer experience contact center on both sides of you, but from a data perspective, how do you sort of plug into that?
Yeah, one of the great things about the COEs is that we're able to work with contact center and customer experience, and I think what you heard Anahita say and what you heard other folks say here is that customer experience is a large part of customer experience is trying to understand the data itself and collecting that data, manipulating that data, making that data available, and then ultimately being able to manage that data in a way that you can make strategic decisions off of it. And so when we think about customer experience from the data perspective, we're often thinking about interoperability. So how can we collect that data and make it interoperable throughout the agency? And how can we manage that as a strategic asset so that we can share with the public as much as possible, share with the agency as much as possible, and ultimately provide folks from the top to the bottom of the agency the information they need to be able to do their job better and ultimately serve customers in a more effective way.
All right.
And then
Yeah.
feedback on the
Yeah,
data,
please.
and the advice I give on the data side, when it comes to CX, is for folks in government, is recognize qualitative data as data. It's real, hard, valuable data that should be balanced, as Anahita said, with quant, but to drive better decisions.
No, that's great, that's excellent. One of the things, I have to sort of transition a little bit here and our panel to talk more about what a phase one engagement looks like. So one of the things I mentioned in my opening statement was that we're looking to maybe expand into maybe an additional phase zero type effort, and we've started that at OPM, where it's a very small group of feds that come in to ask a bunch of questions and to sort of get prepared for when the vendors show up. But maybe we can, those folks aren't here, but if you guys can talk about what it's like to participate in a phase one, some of the things that you might have found in your phase one effort, and Mike, you can start, or
Sure. I think one of the things in phase one that makes it really exciting, which is the discovery phase, is you're working with a brand new team who are kind of all working on something new, right? A new mission in a large organization. And so a lot of what happens at first is just getting to know each other and getting to know the problem. So it's a lot of listening, it's a lot of meeting people, and that's really exciting, right? Because the problem definition starts to come together. I'd say the good first month, at least based on my experience, is just really honing in on that right problem definition together.
And your experience prior to this was non-federal.
It was
So-
non-federal, yes.
So your first day doing phase one was your first day as a Fed too.
It was, yes, exactly. It was the first day as a Fed, and, you know, there are challenges with what I just said, right? I spoke about it, so there are no challenges. One of them is that you're a team in a new environment trying to talk about something new. There's not you're not always met with openness, which you guys all know that. But yes, it's a similar situation, private sector, but perhaps folks who are maybe not, just a different response.
Sure, and we need to call you out on that, but
Yeah.
we have an interesting mix, and
Yeah.
the right half over there is prior Fed, and this half is not. So maybe an interesting experience here, phase one. Eric, do you have any?
Yeah, when we showed up, I spent the first month kind of learning everything that had been done the previous 10 years. And there had been a lot done and a lot of good work. And it became clear pretty quickly to us that we just needed to sort of corral that and make sure that we were able to add that specific COE lens. But oftentimes during that first month, you go to meetings and say, oh, we have some ideas, you're expressing through some ideas, and ultimately folks will tell you that, oh, we've already thought about this. And so adding a little bit of that COE lens to it is, I think, the unique value that we bring. But that does pose challenges, of course.
Megan, what's your experience with the contact center?
Yeah, so I would say, getting to my prior point about talking to users, we weren't, we're there for a limited amount of time, so given the limitations of talking to the public, we had to go around that and find new ways of how we can talk to users, especially primarily for HUD. So we did a mystery shopping exercise where we placed random calls to the existing phone numbers and existing contact centers within HUD, and really found opportunities for HUD to improve. So, we found that people were getting different answers depending on what number they called for the same question. And so, again, we identified opportunities for HUD to then fix.
For Century Coast, I just want to ask you, so you did contact center and both USDA and HUD, and did you propose the same exact solution for both, or did you?
No, I mean, different agencies have different issues, but I think a lot of them is just trying to get to that correct foundation. So it's not even just leveraging the latest technology, because in our situation, they weren't even ready for that. But it's more having a centralized knowledge base so that those answers can be provided, the same answer regardless of the channel. So that was one of the things we proposed both at USDA, which they're working on now, and we'll see if HUD goes that direction as well.
One of the things I remember you discussing with me early on was that you do, I don't know if it's appropriate to say, but a maturity assessment, right? You come in and start asking a whole bunch of questions, and maybe it's the same set of questions for all the places you go, and then based upon those answers, that sort of determines how you choose your own adventure to the next part of this.
Right.
So, explain a little bit.
Yeah, so we do, as Bob said, we do a maturity assessment that we developed at USDA, which we're now leveraging at every agency we go to, so we can see how they compare to other, best-in-class contact centers. And then from there, we're able to, lead them on the path of becoming that best-in-class.
I think simply your approach, your experience, I guess, is a little bit unique in that you stayed with USDA through phase 0-ish before we called it that, phase 1, and now into implementation. So tell us a little bit about how that worked out. Yeah.
Right. No, I think it was really fun and very unique opportunity to be kind of there for all 3 of the phases. So really that kind of phase 0, quote unquote, was a lot of relationship building, getting to know who the different players are, who the different stakeholders were, and really just talking and listening. And that was really it. Phase 1, to Mike's point, we're trying to hone in on a good problem statements that they were really kind of refining with them. And for our team, we noticed there wasn't as much activity. While 90% of USDA's staff are all out in the field, not as much opportunity for programs to always kind of go out into the field to talk directly to the customers. So we wanted to bring some of that back and really try to explore that opportunity with some of the employees there based in DC. So we took a lot of their employees out to the field with us. We introduced them to some of these techniques, like some qualitative techniques. We did observation. So it was a little bit awkward. Aren't we going to show them the thing that we made and get their opinion about it? No, we're not doing usability testing. We're actually just going to talk to them. What do they value? What are their needs in general? So we're actually going to remove talking about technology aside for now, and let's just focus on the people and their needs, and then we can go into kind of that conversation about solutions later. So that was a really fun opportunity to do that with folks, and we did quite a bit of workshops, again, bringing different types of specialized folks across the agency together. So we had IT folks together, we had people who just focused on operation, people who just did KPIs, people who just did, the website, and we put them all in a room, and we talked about the project, we talked about what we learned in the field, and then we journey mapped with them. So a lot of these fun activities we were able to do with folks. And what was nice about it is it got everyone on the same page. So really, before we start to talk about what we're going to build, what fancy IT we're going to solve for you today, we all wanted to get on the same page of where is a customer at today, which customer are we going to focus on, which problem are we going to focus on, and then we did workshops that were more creative solutioning workshops, very, focused on the best ideas based on the data that was presented to them. So having, sight into kind of that growth of knowledge was really amazing, and I'm humbled to have, been part of that. They definitely have, in addition to their CIO's office, they also stood up maybe 5 months into us being their customer experience office, so that was quite great. So we were able to kind of build that partnership from that point on to phase 2.
Great. Having been in the IT field for almost 20 years now, started out as a contractor and having probably designed and delivered terrible software at one point in time, I appreciated learning about the journey mapping process and watching this whole thing unfold with you and with Mike. Mike, can you expand upon what someone was talking about the journey mapping and sort of how it's received and what the disposition of this thing is once you're done?
Yeah, absolutely. So at
Or you're ever done.
Yeah, no. I focus at housing and urban development, and the journey mapping exercise is extremely valuable. So in a past life, I almost used to get frustrated when people spoke about journey map as a deliverable, right? It's a process tool. I'm sure you guys have all had this conversation many times. But it's an extremely valuable foundational element, at least so far based on our experience. And my experience with it is the reason it's valuable is not just because it shows the journey of a customer puts everything in that perspective, or a citizen, and HUD has many customers between themselves and citizens, but shows the overlaps between what employees at HUD really want to be focused on, why they're there, they're very mission-driven, and their desires, and their issues, problems, and values, and how that overlaps with those of their customers and ultimately with the citizens. And when you find those overlaps and tensions, you find a ton of opportunity to improve the experience. And so ultimately we got to recommendations, right? Like, let's fix this thing, let's launch this thing. But the journey map will live on. I could see the thing living on for at least 10 years, right? You can build ideas and experiences off of that and new initiatives off of that for a long time. And the value it brought, I think, internally to HUD was simply bringing all those folks together to say, we, across program areas, we do share pain points, and we share those with our customers.
That's great. So you're seeing the same thing at USDA?
Yes, yes. I think with the journey mapping exercise specifically, you can design them in many different ways, but the way we designed the one for our farm loans project was we mapped out the journey of a specific producer, so a farmer, and getting their farm loan. And then we also did kind of a mirror mapping of the employee, the loan officer's experience. So it was actually the person that we observed out in the field. We've interviewed quite a few of them. I think in total, even just in phase one, we did almost over 100 interviews. And so really the insights that we gleaned, we were able to kind of synthesize that, map that out, also look at all of the different IT technologies that are used along the way, look at the sentiment along the way. So you're really looking at a lot of data in a very simple image that, folks could maybe take for granted sometimes what kind of goes behind all of that. But really, I think with all of the workshops, we were able to communicate all of that. But really, with the map, you see, high points, low points, opportunities. So really, what we were able to do when we engaged with folks like the farm loans program, so this is the business side, they saw so many opportunities of things to improve with their employees, things that they could change out in the field. The people who had more of the IT hat saw where things, fell off. We should probably fix this phone system. We should probably do this. And then with the producers, people with the farmers.gov hat, the people who manage the website, they said, wow, maybe we should put this on our website because they have such a heavy pain point here. That's something our website could fix. So I think really it speaks to a lot of different audiences, which is the beauty of it. But it does take a little bit of effort to put it together and for it to look so simple. And Mike's laughing because it is. But once you get to a place like that, you can take that to so many levels. You can take a more narrow lens, so you can take one part of that journey and go deeper into it and make a whole map just from this one part of this journey map that we made, or you can take a step back, and really make it a small part of somebody's journey, but look at a bigger picture. So there's a lot of ways to play with a tool like that. And what was left, I think, in USDA is they're looking at other ways that they can explore that arena further.
That's great. It is a deceptively simple chart. From a management standpoint, I look at it. It's amazing, you consolidate all the information down. And what is sort of the disposition of that now? So it gets a living document, but I've seen less revisions going on as you sort of get into phase two. But
I think our fear was that it was going to be, put on a folder, put on a shelf somewhere that no one would see it ever again. So we tried really hard to make it accessible in different ways. So some folks created posters and they have them in their walls. So they're very large, so it's actually really easy to look at all of the data. And so I see a lot of people in their office who have it up, Post-it notes, red markers, notes about, potential projects or backlog items. We also put it on our COE website. I think looking at some of the things that USDA is doing, I think they might, potentially post it up as well. But we really try to, put it in different artifacts in different ways so that people could glean from it that way. We also, just because an image is very hard to glean insights from, we have the heavier duty report, we have like a narrower executive report, so we have different ways that people can read it for the people who want to go deeper into it or really look at it at a high level.
Sure. Mike, yours is not about farmers, I assume. So, but, talk a little bit about why you chose the group that you chose and your method to go about counting them.
Certainly, of course. So, so the other trick of the journey map, right, is that agencies serve a very broad population. You can't create a journey map for everybody in the U.S. So you have to choose a portion of the population that you think the situation is going to represent others. So ours focused on senior citizens seeking affordable housing. And there are a lot of reasons for that. You can speak to trend data, you can speak, but the main reason was their needs represent kind of a critical example of the case that most citizens go through when seeking affordable housing. And you asked the question of, so what's the state of it now? What purpose does it serve? So the state of it really, it is the key thing. So the way we created it there, because at HUD, there are, HUD's direct customers are, housing authorities. And they're not directly mostly dealing with citizens. But they ultimately do have impact on citizens. So a lot of organizations, they have a very complicated supply chain or a very complicated distribution network. That's the way we like to think of it. And so the challenge with our journey map was to lay out a journey map for citizens, which we did, and then show behind that the various layers and what the experience is like for everybody kind of in between. And the value of that document now, it lives in all the places Simca mentioned, but the value of it is in each meeting, it is the thing that ties the conversation together. So if you have folks from housing and from single family housing and folks from public Indian housing and you have them in the same room, they can look at this one document, see themselves in it, and realize the similarities and the synergies that exist between them. So it exists on the walls and in people's hands, and it's really in every meeting we have as the way to kind of bring the discussion together quickly.
It exists in my heart, too.
In your heart.
Megan and Eric, if you can just expand upon how maybe you contributed to the journey mapping process or how it has helped your areas. I know that we worked together. It was primarily their deliverables in the end here, but I know that you guys had some inputs and outputs from it.
I would just say we leverage, both journey maps in both agencies at this point. And then I think if any opportunities come up that are more contact center focused, we're able to leverage those.
From the data analytics standpoint, I think from my perspective, it was kind of eye-opening to be able to work with customer experience professionals for the first time. Watching the journey mapping process, I realized how much value in qualitative data we can pull out, which is hard for a data person. But I've come around to realizing that throughout this journey mapping process, it underpins a lot of the work that we're doing in the data analytics COE. And it keeps us grounded in the fact that while we're often working with sort of indirect measures of customer experience from the data side, we're trying to collect the data so that people can make good decisions regarding customers. So we feel a little bit detached, but through this journey mapping process, I think it's been easy to recognize and easy to leverage a lot of that great information that's come in so that you can feel more connected to the end outcomes that you're looking towards.
Cool. Well, last question about journey maps, we'll move on, but how well were they received when you first sort of proposed them, maybe several months later? What's your general sense for that? Was it the first time that your agency had used them, or was it something that they do kind of continually?
For us, for the program that we were working in initially, it was new. I think when we said the word map, I think the first thing that came to people's mind was a process map. And with lean and all of that, it's pretty popular. So I think we had to, instead of just explain ourselves till our face turned blue, we had to kind of show what that meant. So we talked about layers, we talked about we're putting more than just the process here. We will glean your process, but not you tell me what your process is and I'll write it out. We're actually going to get the process from the perspective of the customer. So we might come back to the room and I'll show you what the process is, from their perspective, and we're actually not going to change it because you think it's a different process. This is the process that most of your customers told us they experience, so that's why we want to map it out so that you can glean from that. You know, what is that? What is the disconnection between why I thought the process was a certain way and why, you know, the 50 customers that I interviewed, they never saw that piece in the process before. So I think there is so much enlightenment that happens when you kind of do an exercise like that because of all of the layers. You have perspective of the customer, you have sentiment, you have, you know, an employee's perspective, you have their customer's perspective, you have technology's layer. So there's so much more to glean than just what we think the process is, because that's what our handbook says the process is. So that was a really a fun exercise to do.
Anything else on that, Mike?
I mean, she summed it up perfect.
Good to go. All right, perfect. So one of the things that I mentioned or failed to mention at the beginning is that we are sort of a unique group in that while our focus is the strategic level, CIO, deputy secretary level, our mission is very tactical. So we are forced to deliver. We like delivering. It's part of our mantra, right? So we can't just come in and study something and put the journey map on a shelf in a binder and let it get dusty, right? Our job is to actually deliver something, and it is reported up all the way through the chain through the OAI. And so it's always in the back of our mind as we're going through. And sometimes I feel like the agency has to sort of take it on faith that we're taking them to the right spot. The journey map you mentioned might have been the first time that the people you're working with ever used it. I'm not sure about it. I think it was very similar. So it's you gotta sort of let this process run through a little bit to get to that point. So that's important to note. One of the things that maybe we can talk about is sort of that transition and from one into a phase two. So you work all the way through this. You develop the journey map. Folks contribute to that, but there's stuff outside of the journey map too. Megan's stuff and Eric's was very distinct from there. But maybe describe from your perspectives, let me start with Eric here, about what you've determined is an outcome from phase one, and the RFI has been on the street already, so I think we're okay to talk about sort of things you're looking at to what is that transition into phase two. So talk a little bit about what you found and what you were going to go out and do.
Absolutely, as long as it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead. Doing the RFI.
No, I think in phase one, sitting down with HUD partners, we, as I mentioned earlier, collected a lot of great information on sort of what had been done previously, and made sure to organize that information and collect it, add the COE perspective from customer experience to contact center to cloud specifically as well. Naturally, I think folks in the room will be no surprise that we work very closely with the cloud team in deploying our implementation phase. So I think after we collected all that, what we wanted to bring forth was a comprehensive guide to HUD, a comprehensive data analytics rethinking the HUD, which included several things. One is being able to make sure that data can be governed to manage that interoperability that I was talking about earlier. So bringing customer experience data together with financial data, I think, can be extraordinarily powerful. Bringing all sorts of data together from the program areas to make sure that the agency can get a full picture of what it's doing. There's also quite a few pieces of guidance and legislation out there for data folks right now that everyone's trying to scramble to understand. And so a big part of what we're doing is trying to catalog that and make sure that we're meeting our requirements as closely as possible via some of the work we want to do with the Office of the Chief Data Officer and things of that nature. Additionally, outside of what is more of a strategic level governance, bringing on an OCDO, we want to make sure that we're, to Bob's point, delivering and improving service delivery. So a big piece of what we're doing is thinking about, and we're already fairly far down the line on some of these things, thinking about what types of dashboards, data visualizations can really help improve decision making early on and have a large impact on the agency, as well as what sort of next generation analytics can we look towards. I'm not sure if artificial intelligence, machine learning can be called next generation at this point, but
Multi-generation.
Multi-generation, that's right. But I think ultimately we want to make sure that we're preparing HUD well for the future. So we took a broad view of what we wanted to roll out at HUD, and part of that is bringing on these other COEs to make sure that we are working in an integrated manner to include all of our visions. So.
Cool. Mike, what do you?
I think, so one of the big things, if you guys have noticed in the RFI, is HUD is investing in a capability, a centralized capability around customer experience. And that's a big deal because like many organizations, right, the big insight that you could have told me before probably is that citizens' needs and their intermediaries' needs don't line up to any one program area or any one specific part of the organization. To address those needs best, it takes coordination across these program areas. And for many, many reasons that there's no judgment behind, that's difficult to do today. And so one of the big outcomes is building that centralized capability that can coordinate across program areas to really affect change, big or small, on behalf of citizens. There are other things, but that's kind of the core.
Okay. Megan, how about you? You're
Sure,
phase
so-
one in.
Yes, so through our research, we found there were over 100 different numbers for folks to call within HUD to get their answer results. So that's basically, 99 wrong numbers. So we want to yeah, that's a song, right? So we want to centralize that so that there's one number to call and consolidate their existing contact centers into that one. We're calling it HUD Central at this point. And then on the foundation of all that is that centralized technology stack so that they're all on the same common platform. So that's what we're recommending moving forward.
Okay.
We
You're
found
in
a lot
phase
of,
two, so,
we found a lot of insights from our phase one work. We definitely in phase two took some of those opportunities, some of those insights, especially in the farm loans arena, and are currently working on products that can address some of the needs from our map and things like that. We also, took it a step further in now that USDA has had a little bit of a flavor of what teams like this can do. So in my team, for example, with the CX team, we have a mixture of visual designers, content designers, researchers, analysts, data folks. So it's a really nice combination of different types of disciplines in one room. That you can kind of explore different opportunities. So with the timing of when the 21st Century Idea Act came into play in December of 2018, we thought it was with a kind of call out to that initial IT modernization, the partnership with the CIO, we definitely leveraged that opportunity to take that a step further. USDA is such a large department. It's made up of almost 17 agencies. So how do we coordinate such a large mass of agencies to kind of approach this 21st Century Idea Act? And one of the first steps was actually very similar to Anahita's approach, which was to kind of bring the different leaderships together. So the CIO came, the Chief Customer Officer came to the table, the Director of Office of Communication came together at the table, and we put out a plan. Part of that plan involves our team very heavily doing workshops, assessing the needs of all the webmasters across all of their website properties. So we're actively going through work right now to address a lot of the things that came out of the 21st Century Idea Act, so that USDA can be in a good place to continue that as we transition off towards the end of the fiscal year.
Cool. One of the things that I remember at the end of both phase ones, COEs determined, usually I think at USDA we had about 12 potential solutions and they wound up selecting 6. And then I think at HUD we had almost 15 solutions and then they selected 4 or 5, I can't remember the exact number. What factors contribute to that, that sort of down selecting, if you will, wrong term, but going from the larger to the smaller? Any want to take that at all?
I think a lot of different things. Of course, the first one would be definitely the impact to the customer, right? And then we could do that by gleaning several data sets between operational, qualitative, and all of that. I think the next one would also be, just because of our work and the scale of our work and the presence of all of us being there at once, was also whether it had a potential of any enterprise opportunity, right? As a CIO, they're always looking for when is it smart to kind of go larger with some of the IT efforts? When is it more of a narrower opportunity? So I think a couple of those were definitely considered when we looked at that.
I'd say another big piece from a data perspective, and I think all of us experience it to some extent, is business value and making sure that what we are providing not only provides value back to the customer, but can also ensure that it's helping the agency manage the resources it has in a better way, ultimately. And so that's something from a data analytics standpoint we look at quite closely, and we're always factoring that into the equation as to whether this is something we want to bring forth to our clients.
Great. I think at that, there's about 15 minutes or so left of our time on stage. I would like to open it up to the floor here for questions. No one wants to be it one way, so I want to be able to, I think someone has a mic in the back, the Colleen. Does anybody have any questions for the team? Oh, there's a microphone coming your direction.
Thanks so much. We heard a lot about how you all must coordinate with each other and collaborate across the COEs and the stakeholders in the agencies that you're in. Can you talk about how it's penetrated down to the actual employees and the whole approach to the change management that's going to come with IT modernization? How has that worked so far, especially as you've moved into phase 2? And what have you learned?
You want to start off on that one, Megan?
Sure. So I think one thing we forgot to mention, our teams are also made up of detailees from our partner agencies. So at USDA, we're still trying to get that started at HUD, but at USDA, we have folks that are going to be carrying on this work after the COEs leave. So that's been crucial to that success. At HUD specifically, because change management is probably the biggest piece of all of this and making sure this works well, we started a team where we have representatives, and we plan to have more people from the various program areas. So we're starting small and expanding that as we move forward with our phase 2 implementation work.
Yeah, so we've also done the same, right? We've reached out across program areas and have folks involved throughout the process of phase 1. And that's great. It's great for the process, but it's also great for engagement. The other element there is because they're going to help us, what's been most rewarding out of that is that you see people who are mission driven, like I said before, who really are there for a greater cause. A lot of them could be making more money elsewhere probably, but they're there for a reason and for the mission. And it feels like sometimes when we're involving them and bringing them along this process, they're now learning some new tools and some new approaches and new ways of thinking that they can use to start acting even more in the way they want to act in their day-to-day jobs, right? In the way they desire to. So from my experience, once those folks get engaged and we involve them in the process, the adoption it catches on like wildfire. So that's how we've been doing it. There are more formalized change management approaches we've spoken about as we move into phase 2, right? Offering those folks maybe some more official training or more formalized training. But honestly, I think the best training for this work is to be able to sit beside us as we do it, or sit together as we do it, I should say. And that's how we've been operating.
Yeah, I do want to just put a finer point on that. We don't do this for you. We do this with you. It's a partnership, and at USDA we have detailees, and at HUD we have co-leads, and it's definitely been a great, I think, relationship between both of those. OPM, we're in phase 0, so we're just started forming and snoring and norming over there. It is working out really well too, but we're at the very initial stage.
Yeah, and can I add one thing?
Please,
about it.
sorry, yeah.
So our team is, right, there's me, the least important person on the team, there's the vendor team, there's co-leads at the agency, and then there's these working groups we've engaged. And when we get in a room, all of the who everybody is melts away pretty quickly, which is a good indicator, right? I forget that the vendor team's a vendor team, right? It doesn't matter, actually. We're all in one room solving one problem together based on the same set of information, and that's key.
And I would also say that, at least with HUD, our executive sponsor, who Ralph is going to be speaking in that next panel, he is the champion for both Mike and I and our teams. So having that engagement at that C-suite level is so important.
Absolutely, it's a driver for change, the organization, so, awesome. So just your questions over there, might take a while to get through.
I mean, I can speak, I'm pretty loud, so.
Yeah.
And talk. So the, Alex Leonard from Policy Safety, question around organizational design. So CX, as you build the customer journeys, it affects the way the processes are, it affects the silos, and you certainly realize that the existing organization is not really following the customer, so you need to be kind of reorganized. So we can share some of the thoughts around that. And we've seen that in commercial sector where actually all departments, marketing and sales and financing turns into something completely different that has not existed before. So if you can share, what are some of your plans from that perspective?
Okay, Mike, do you want to take a jump on that?
I don't think in the short amount of time that we've been there, I don't think we're seeing that, you know, the organizations are kind of restructuring themselves, if that was kind of to your question. I definitely think it's opened the door for the opportunity to potentially do so. It is a little bit more tricky in government to, you know, combine offices or, you know, change your program name even and all of these things. So I think a lot of them, what we've seen, have a different relationship together, right? And so even different offices, well, they've started, you know, monthly calls that they've never had monthly calls before, but now they're going to start because they understand the value proposition there. There was a CX office, you know, shortly after we got there. There was a few other vendors working on similar projects, but not the exact same projects. So we thought there was value in actually having them come together every week because some of the different leadership at USDA, you know, were a little bit confused with what's being made here versus there. So by bringing everybody together, that started, you know, more conversations and more exploratory opportunities. So I think even small changes, like a meeting that never probably would have taken place otherwise had we not, you know, kind of brought those different folks together, I think is very impactful in and of itself. And that's without organizational change, and that's just pure communication. So I think we've learned a lot between like the power of communication and the different avenues that we can bring people together, the different settings. Sometimes it's great, you know, we've used several techniques where, you know, we won't just meet them in their office and go to the conference room that's next door. We'll take them across the street, you know, to the Forest Service building, even though that's not their agency, but it's still part of USDA and they have a cool, you know, conference room. So getting everybody kind of out of their usual mindset is sometimes really healthy, and meeting new folks at their agency that are also part of the same mission. So that was really valuable.
I just wanted to tee up to what you said there. I do feel like, well, structurally and budgetarily, I mean, it does take maybe a year or years to make changes. I do feel like the place that we're at today are making changes, you know, with there's Jillian is the second in the Office of Customer Experience leads at USDA, and Ralph will be up here later with a panel. HUD, I think they're absolutely positively taking this seriously, and they're moving resources towards it. And I think we're at the formative early stages of it, but it's definitely good to see that emphasis in this particular. It's the most important area.
Yeah, no, and it can't be heavy-handed, right? The private sector, the risk of a reorg, I mean, you can't do this work without wanting to reorg something. The risk of a reorg is shareholders get upset. That's a monetary risk, that's a big risk. the risk of doing something drastic in a government agency is citizens don't get served properly. And so I feel like there are those shifts happening, but they're happening in a very careful and intentional way to make sure that the impact on citizens isn't negative as it happens. So it might be a slower turn, but it's a powerful shift.
Traffic. And over here, where's the mic? The mic is close to a question? That's great. Great.
So a little bit earlier, you guys were talking about the value of both leveraging qualitative and quantitative data in terms of gaining insight on the customer experience and incorporating that into some of the journey map and the decisions you make. But I was a little bit curious because for a lot of agencies or organizations that are new to customer experience, sometimes finding the right balance of both of those can be difficult. Qualitative data is great, gives you a lot of why, how much does something impact the person, why it bothers them. But the quantitative aspect of it tells you what they actually do, despite what they say, and how often that happens. So how do you specifically find that balance, and what guidance would you give to an organization who's just starting that to ensure that they don't maybe fall into an open loop type of design where they're creating features that people complain about but don't actually use?
For me, I think and that's where the industry partners come in. I think there is a lot of amazing talent out there when it comes to synthesis of data. So you have folks who have data science backgrounds. Those folks that you probably wouldn't initially, it would come to mind, but in the design world, this is kind of part of that package. You have data scientists, you have research analysts, you have a lot of amazing skill sets when it comes to bringing synthesis together. And I think probably a lot of the industry partners here who do design can speak to a really nice blend of expertise. So, even we had amazing workshops for web modernization because of the IDEA Act. So we met a lot of these agencies, and part of our workshop was focused on customer research. How do you know your customers today so that your website is serving the right customers? And so we talked about a lot of different research techniques, and some folks were even asking about, if I had a budget, how could I explore, acquiring somebody for a short amount of time to do some synthesis work for us. There's also other, resources that our office and GSA has with a technology transformation service. So like folks like an 18F, Presidential Innovation Fellows, so other feds that do this type of work as well. But there's a lot to explore in that arena. So I think my advice might be to look to industry, look to your fellow federal partners who have been a little bit more heavy-handed in the design aspect, and they can give you a lot of good recommendations on specific types of talent that are really great at doing that.
I just want to tee up that a little bit. And I understand the questioner's question. For me, briefing up the qualitative is difficult, right? So the quantitative is no problem. Look, I have a chart, I have a graph, Eric's giving me all these great visualizations for it. But this is how Simca feels about this, and it becomes very difficult.
Not me.
No. But well, why? How do you know that? And as they dive down deeper into it, I get to the point where I just don't know the answer. I don't know, because Simca says, right? I don't know.
No, it's definitely tricky. It's not an easy balance. I think between the qualitative, the data that says this is what they're doing, but then also, some of your just other data about sentiment data. So there's other surveys like with A11, they're asking about things like trust, satisfaction. So you're talking about how they feel about some of these things, and you have that in a very quantitative way. And that is actually much easier to blend with your operational data because it's numbers and numbers together. And then the qualitative can be an added layer. So where they need a quote, where they need a little bit more understanding of how they describe the value, can be something to explore also. So if you look at some of the A11 requirements with the President's management agenda around customer experience, you can see those 7 questions, and you could think about adding some of those things into maybe some of the surveys that you have out there already.
One of the things I think that can help also, and being up on stage, I don't like to talk about failures per se, but I feel like one of the things we could have done better, and we we first started was do benchmarking, right? So, and, the folks call us in to do work, and they want you to start working right away. And I totally understand it's their money, I want to make sure that I'm giving the best value to the taxpayer, but maybe if you haven't had us come out yet, or if you are thinking about doing this on your own, definitely take stock of what the situation is today beforehand, because we're at the point now, again, I'm trying to brief up some of these metro, well, how much better is it today than it was before? It's a lot better. Well, how do you really know? Well, they quantify a lot. I don't know, it's faster. How much faster? I don't really know. We don't, it's hard to get to those very specific details about how much faster is it for a farm loan to go through than it was last year. So I think we have time for one more question before they kick us off stage. Microphone.
I don't need a mic, that's okay.
Green dress.
Oh, you go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to ask real quickly, and I believe it's Sandra, you were speaking of the number of telephone numbers that existed in USDA, and the solution was just to have one number. Did that increase the customer wait time by sending all the customers just to one number?
So yeah, so my name's Megan, I'm
I'm
sitting in,
sorry.
that's okay, no, I'm sitting in for Sandra, she's sick,
Oh,
so.
sorry.
Yeah,
I should have introduced her
no,
properly.
it's okay, it's okay. So we actually haven't, so we did find over 100 different phone lines at HUD, but we haven't implemented anything yet. So that was just part of our research, and then what we're recommending moving forward is moving to that one number.
All right. Well, I'll take one more question.
Thank you, and I'll go really quick.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your success at USDA. How are you implementing those lessons learned and those successes to help agencies like HUD and the other agencies that will follow? Has it helped them to expedite their success story because you've already had a success at a different agency?
Take that.
Yeah, so I know for me, I meet weekly with Sandra, who's the lead at USDA, so I'm at HUD. And we meet weekly so that we can make sure, hey, you didn't quite get this right. Let's fix it for the next agency, for the next time. So we have that reach back so that we don't make the same mistake twice.
The other thing I'd like to say is we are trying to publish more. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we do is put out all of our lessons learned, our best practices, the playbooks, the service catalogs online, so that I come from a small agency prior to this, and that small agency probably wouldn't have the opportunity to invest in the Centers of Excellence because it would be a large purchase for them. But if they have the ability to get all of the lessons learned and all the great documentation, it's possible that they can use that and to run this thing on their own.
And we have playbooks that are all these things.
One thing for that, just
Go ahead.
so, and the other thing is the co-lead, my co-lead at HUD, it's getting him over to USDA, getting him over to GSA as well, like I said, the least important person, so the more that he can kind of absorb what's happened and translate that to what makes sense based on his 30 years experience at HUD, the better off we are.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Okay.